Thank you for joining us on our journey here to preserve the history of mixed martial arts. When I wanted to take on this project, I needed help. I brought in one of my favorite matchmakers, Miguel Iturrate, and the MMA detective, Mike Davis. So to do this, we've been able to preserve history. Welcome and enjoy. Okay, welcome back, Lights Out fans, podcast members, everybody. Just so you know, coming up August 20th, I believe. Yeah, 20th. BKFC 20, Mississippi, Biloxi. Watch it, get the app. I'm going to be there doing some fight commentary. I'll be talking about fights. But right now, we're going to talk some real fighters. We're going to talk to an old school guy, a guy I'd love to get in bare knuckle, guy who's one of the epitomes of what I think an old school tough guy. And you even know this by his nickname, the dentist, Josh Neer. Miguel, what do you know about Josh?
Well, I know I couldn't stop watching him fight. I mean, it was every time he gets in the ring, it makes it a must-watch UFC in my book back in the day. We trying to get a bunch of guys like that here on the interviews. I'm very happy to get Josh here because Josh is a guy that doesn't like to do interviews. And I'm going to hand it off to the MMA detective to tell the story about Josh gave us some prerequisites to do this interview, and I think it was a good time.
So I've had notes on Josh for a long time. Like when he was in the indie scene, he was just kind of cleaning up. And that's just when I kind of started tracking him. And Josh refused to do this interview unless Chris was involved. I think he saw us like the Travis View interview, and he's like, "Yeah, it was good, but I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it unless Chris is there." And we had to delay it a couple times because of Chris's schedule.
Well, I think more than anything, he just wants to have like somebody who can relate to and understand. Like, yeah, man. I mean, I know what he wants somebody who understands what he's talking about. And if you don't get it, he knows I'll get it. So I think that's why I want somebody who he can bounce stuff off of. You know what I mean? So I'm glad he's doing this, man. Thank you for make sure I'm involved, Josh. That's awesome.
Yeah. Mike, did you know Josh before you met him? Because I never met him.
I've met him, but I wasn't like in his inner circle or anything like that. We wouldn't train together or anything, but I've met him before.
Lytle's aboard at least.
Yeah, I saw him fight in Minnesota in the Extreme Cage Combat with Jeff Paul, his event, him and Nick Gamst. I saw him fight there actually maybe twice. I think I've seen him fight there. But in essence, he's got that same Mike Perry style of attitude where he's not going to respect you unless he knows you've done what he has done himself. Yeah. So, I mean, that's how we got Josh. And he does not do interviews. He's probably not going to do many more after this. So it's a good get on our end. September 18th, I'm in Tampa, Florida. Go to Smooth Comp. If you're a jiu-jitsu guy, register for a grappling tournament. If you listen to our other episodes, please ignore that I was at the Olympiad in October because I was not supposed to announce it then, but now I can announce it. So now I'm at the Olympiad October 10th, but that other stuff, please discard. So October 10th, Orlando, Florida, Olympiad, another jiu-jitsu tournament. Florida 2 months in a row. Please stop by, say hello. I'm done, Chris. I've got my points.
All right. Go ahead, Miguel.
A Declaration of Independence. We are getting some photo help here, sharpening up the delivery from our buddy Keith Mills, author of a historic MMA book. So get out to yahoo.com, amazon.com, wherever, and pick up A Declaration of Independence by Keith Mills.
I might even be in that book, hopefully. I don't know.
We both are, Chris. We both are. And but without further ado, Josh Neer.
All right, everybody. Real happy to be here right now. Another really tough Midwestern guy. Another one of the guys. I like it, the old school guys who I can brag about. And I always talk about, being hard-nosed and tough. And this is definitely one of the people whose name pops up in my head all the time. Got a great nickname, even the dentist. What's happening, Josh? How you been, brother?
Good. How are you guys?
Couldn't be better, man. Just enjoying life right now. So, back in the day, in my opinion, I think the best gym in the world, the best fighters in the world were coming from where you guys were out of. In Iowa, Miletich team, all that. Legendary sparring. Give us some insight on those. How tough was that room? What was it like going in there day in and day out?
Oh man, it was tough. So I originally started in Des Moines, and then I moved to Miletich about 3 years into after I started fighting. But yeah, I just need, like, when I started, I had like tough guys, but I wasn't really like getting coached, like I wasn't really learning so much. So I fought Spencer Fisher, and then after that, like they were like, yeah, you should come out and train with us. And so then that's when I moved over there. But yeah, I mean, I remember the first time I went just to check it out, and me and my friend came, and I remember like Tony Fricklin was warming up, and Robbie Lawler was there, Pat Miletich, of course. And so we went in there, and then I got stuck with Tony Fricklin, and Pat Miletich was in my group. I think maybe Matt Hughes a few times, but man, like Tony Fricklin was a beast, dude. He just kicked the shit out of my legs, and Pat was kicking my legs, and it was a memorable experience. I remember, and like, so basically we got our ass beat, and then
we at least have each other's backs.
We were there for a week though, so I was like, my friend, I was like, hey bro, I liked it, because I'm like, I wasn't used to getting, I was like, the big dog. So
Yeah.
I was like, man, after I went there for the first time, just got whooped on. I was like, that's where I need to be. And yeah, it was crazy. I just remember my friend after sparring, I don't know what group he was in, but it was a bunch of killers too. And his whole leg was just black and blue all the way up. His leg was just black and blue. And he's like, dude, you can go back tomorrow, but I'm not going to be able to go. I can't even walk. And I was like, my leg wasn't as bad as his, but I was beat up, but I was like, I'm going back the whole week. And, so that just kind of explains, like, when you first go there, it's like an initiation, like almost like a gang, they're going to beat your ass, and either you're going to sink or you're going to swim. So I loved it, and that's, it was the start of it. And then I eventually moved out there.
See, that when you got there, and Chris went right into it with you. I'm going to hand it off to Mike. But when you got there, was like Miletich and like Hughes and Jens Paul, they were already champions. They were already like legends, or like people you knew already and watched. So that's got to pump you up too. That's got to make you feel like. Talk about how it was meeting those big names.
I mean, at the time we had Jens Pulver, who wasn't a champ, because I don't know, UFC might have got rid of the 55 division at the time. And then we had Matt Hughes, who was the champ. Rich Franklin came out and did his camps with us. And then we had Tim Sylvia was the heavyweight champ too. So, I mean, dude, it was a bunch of killers.
And
that's almost all of them.
Yeah, and light heavyweight, where they didn't have a champ, they only had Jeremy Horn. So I mean, it's
actually, right when I got there, Jeremy Horn just left like a month before I got there. So I kind of missed out on training with him. But everyone that was there, all say good things about Jeremy.
How long did it take before you were accepted by them?
It was a while, it was probably 2 or 3 months at first. Everyone was kind of mean to me, or what, they weren't really mean to me, they're just seeing if I'm gonna stick around, because at the time, like, there was so many guys that would just come and then leave, because it's like, oh, they just couldn't take the practice. So I didn't really take it personal. I just kind of knew how it was, because I was in sports and stuff. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to have to earn my respect a little bit before, everyone's going to be cool to me. But, originally, the one guy, Spencer Fisher, obviously he was cool because we fought right before then. But Tim Sylvia, like, kind of like, he was the one that like always like took me under his wing and, you know, would like, you know, say positive things to me. And he was really instrumental in me being there. He was kind of like the team captain.
That's cool.
And, yeah, Tim was the man. He like worked harder than, he was like the hardest working guy in the room. So
Really?
yeah, Tim Sylvia, man, he was like he was just training all day long. Like, I mean, everyone kind of knows Tim. He's not very athletic.
For sure.
I mean, so that's why I have so much respect for him. I'm kind of the same way. I'm not like I'm not gifted. I can't do all the flying stuff and all the, you know, like it doesn't come to me naturally. So, you know, I really looked up to Tim a lot because he was, Pat used to say he couldn't walk and chew bubble gum at the same time. So, you know, that kind of explains how talented Tim was. And to be the heavyweight champion, you know, it's a lot of hard work that went into that.
Absolutely.
He fought in a Super Brawl tournament that may have been the greatest heavyweight tournament on United States soil. And his performance in that tournament it was incredible. I think it was a Super Brawl 24, 25. I don't have the exact number, but he, like you said, whatever he was given, he worked so much harder to get where he was at. And you could see it. Yeah, I respect him too.
Well,
I agree.
one of the other guys that they had there that I like to ask about, maybe he was gone by the time you were there, but they had another heavyweight named Mark Hansen. Like, I guess he would be the guy who'd pile up with Tim. You know, Tim needs a partner.
Yeah.
How was Mark? Because Mark's like one of those guys that he can move like Brock Lesnar, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Mark, you know, like I was smaller, so I didn't really train with him a lot, but yeah, he was always going with Tim, and they were just having battles, you know. It was he was one of the guys that definitely pushed him and helped him, you know, make it to the top.
Now, you know, I know it seems like at most gyms you have the guys you call the gym fighters, guys who you go there like, man, this guy's awesome. I mean, even wrestling or fighting, whoever, who are just dominating in the room, but can't translate that over to a fight. Do you guys have any guys like that you can think of, like, man, this guy's ultra talented, but never could really put together in the cage? Can you think of anybody like that there? Or they told them to get out? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few guys, but I mean, he was definitely, everyone like knew that he was super talented, and he did, you know, make it to a pretty high level. He might have even won IFL if you remember Ryan McGivern, but
oh yeah,
he was a beast in the room, and like
hard
if
worker.
he could do what he was in the room, like he would be like UFC champion. But
Wow,
he never fought in UFC, but I mean he did some good things in IFL. I don't know if he was IFL champion. I'm pretty sure he was, but he never got a fight in the UFC. And then Jason Black, man, Jason Black was the man, and like he got into UFC after he's past his prime, and he ended up cutting too much weight. He went down to 155, and he was just all sucked down. He was a 170 pounder. I think going down to 55 kind of hurt him.
Yeah, I had heard that you and Rory Markham used to have some legendary
Rory
sessions.
Markham was, dude, he was a beast.
Yeah.
I mean,
fellow Southsider, Chris.
He had some good fights in UFC and IFL and stuff too. He was definitely tough. One of the toughest.
He's fun to watch. Definitely fun to watch.
There was a wrestler guy named Steve Rusk? Am I getting the name right? So he's another one of those gym guys, right?
Yeah, he's kind of like Mark Hansen, you know, like when I was there, he didn't fight or anything, but you know, I just heard stories about him and, you know, seen him going with Tim and stuff. If you guys remember Cory Hill from the Ultimate Fighter team, oh man, dude, that guy, like literally, I tell people like the best guy that I've ever went with in the room is probably Cory Hill.
He's got I think he's got less than a 500 record too. So,
oh really?
So here's the thing about Cory Hill. He lied to get on the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah, he didn't have any fights.
He said that he did. I don't think he had any fights or something. He said he was like 5-0, and then somehow he got on. But because I'm friends with Nate Diaz, and I was like, dude, I can't, because I think that actually Nate fought. Oh, I think he fought Cory in the semis.
Yeah,
but I was like, dude, and Nate like kind of said the same thing. He's like, dude, that guy was a fucking beast in the room, and yeah, I mean, he was super good. He passed away though, man. It was sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember how he passed away. It was like a brain aneurysm or something, but
Yeah, he
Yeah,
went
something
through
strange.
I became pretty close to him when he was training with us, because like no one ever wanted to go with him, and then I was the guy that, like, I'm the type of guy that I always go with anyone. I don't care if how big they are or whatever. So he'd be like, I need a partner, and no one would want to go with him because he was crazy athletic. I mean, and he's like 6'6", 155 pounds. So no one would ever train with him, and then I'd be like, I'll go with you. Get over here. So it would always be me and Cory scrapping. Cory basically beating me up the whole time, but me staying in there.
Yeah, he's one of those people where he's a kind of like a hidden footnote, but anybody that knows him is just like, we had Rob Kahn on one of our first interviews, and he's just like, he's never seen anybody gifted like Cory Hill. That actually came out of his mouth in our interview. So let me just kind of get this started, because we got I got a lot of notes on Josh. So Josh, we're going to take you through your UFC career. We usually do the independent scene pre-UFC. Got a couple people that had requested that we interview you, and they specifically said, the guy fought both Diaz brothers. There's got to be gold there. And they're emailing me going, that's the interview that they wanted to hear, which culminates in us being here now. And as a side note, Josh said that he would not do this interview with Miguel and I unless Chris was here. So
He's a smart guy, man. He don't want. I mean, let's be honest with you.
Hey, well, why waste your time?
Yeah, I gotta have a fighter on here. I don't ever even do these. So
you don't.
No,
I really appreciate you doing this, man. It's cool, dude. I mean, like I said, everybody I know respect. What's that?
I literally don't ever do these, but like you know, I always looked up to you, so I was like, yeah, if a good fight. If a good old school fighter invites me, I'll do it every time. But
I appreciate that, man. But like
no
I said,
reporters.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm all right with that.
Yeah, I'm more than fine with it. And I was telling Miguel and Chris, he doesn't do these at all. So it's a good one, which I'm glad, we're doing your UFC career, but let's encapsulate the indie grind. So Josh had roughly about 100 amateur fights. That includes a win over Houston Alexander.
He was huge.
Exactly. That's how fucking nuts Josh is.
Yeah.
So,
I was drunk too.
You were what?
You were what?
I was drunk. I was drunk when we fought.
Was that one of those where you just showed up there and they're like, yeah, I'll fight. You weren't even supposed to fight. Was that one of those?
Yeah, it was kind of like I got into an argument with Chad Mason, who was the promoter. And I was drunk. I had a keg at my house that night. And so I came to the fights not even planning on fighting. But we got into an argument about something. He was like, I'll have Houston beat your ass. And I was like, all right, well, let's fight then. I was drunk. I don't care. I'm ready to fight. I was like, you got to pay me, though. And so he's like, oh, I'll pay you. He's like, I'll give you $500 if you fight him. And so that's how I ended up fighting him. He gave me $500. So, all right, let's do it.
This is why we love the indie scene. So fast forward through his pro career, on the indie grind, Josh goes 12-1-1. He's won losses against Spencer Fisher, future teammate, and you could see based on the cornering you of him and himself of you, there was a bond there that happened that night. And you also had a draw against an incredibly hot at the time, Joe Jordan. Jordan, when Josh fought him, Josh said he was always kind of with Chad Mason's shows. It was more of kind of like lower end shows because of where Josh lived. And Joe Jordan was tearing up the indie scene, and he was legit. And us people in the know are going, well, we're about to find the truth out about Josh Neer. And they said it was a legendary war between the two of you. And I also heard you may have got gypped on that decision.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I definitely thought I won, but it's all good.
So he goes
real quick before you go on, Josh, could you give us a little bit of your background? Did you wrestler, taekwondo, boxing? Just give everybody a little bit of background for real quick. Sorry, Mike.
Basically wrestling. My dad was a huge Mike Tyson fan, so like I grew up watching Mike Tyson and stuff, and we would have boxing gloves and like just box, but it's not like we were trained or anything.
Yeah.
And as a high school wrestler, I got fourth in the state high school meet my senior year. Yeah, in Iowa. And then I did wrestle a year in college. Should have made it to nationals, but I didn't. So that's all that really basically I was a wrestler.
Okay. Let me ask you, how about in Iowa? I think I know the answer, but how about street fights? Did you dabble?
Yeah, I got into a few street fights.
Okay. Any legendary ones you want to tell us about, or nothing big?
Not really that I can think of. I mean, back when we were fighting, we got into some crazy big brawls and stuff. But I mean, I better not say those. I don't want any lunch out for my arrest or anything.
Yeah, you don't want to run any of them back.
That's your limitations. I think you're good, unless somebody died.
All right.
Yeah,
so Josh goes on a 10-fight win streak on the independent circuit, and he finally gets the call up to the UFC at UFC Fight Night, the first one, and it was August 6, 2005, and they put him up against a guy that his reputation outside of the cage is so incredibly reckless that everybody's got a story about him, and that's Drew Fickett. Why don't you tell us how that fight came about and your thoughts going into it were?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I beat like a lot of good guys around the Midwest. There wasn't really many good guys left for me to beat besides going to the UFC. And so I got called up to the UFC. I went into the fight. It's kind of crazy. I haven't even ever told this story, but you go out on Tuesday and then the fight is on Saturday or whatever the fight was. You get there like 5 days before, and somehow I got a staph infection in my elbow. And I think it was from the UFC mats. I mean, it had to be, but it was actually the first time that I ever got staph infection. So I didn't know what it was. And I just remember my arm was starting to swell up and I was trying to squeeze it out. And I was like, dude, what the hell is all this pus, And I kept trying to squeeze it out. And then I was like, I didn't know what it was. And then we finally went to the doctor after weigh-ins, actually. And I got medication. So I should never have even fought because my arm was literally like the size of a softball at my elbow. And I mean, that's not an excuse, but it's like, man, by the time that I got to the fight, I just wanted to get the fight over with and just be done. I went in there. It's kind of weird, I got like the first UFC fight jitters, and it was almost like a dream when I was walking out. It was like I wasn't even there, and it was super fast. Somehow he took my back, he just choked me out quick, and that was it.
So going into this fight, you've got Josh Neer at 13-1-1, and then you got Drew Fickett, who's 26-3. And it's Drew's second UFC appearance. His first one was a loss against future opponent Nick Diaz. Yeah. Drew and yourself, did you guys have any pre-fight issues?
Yeah, but I don't even remember. Like, it was just like, back when they had the underground, I guess they still do have the underground, but people used to, go and bicker and fight like little kids and stuff on the underground. And so I don't even remember, like, we were just probably bickering on the underground or something, but I don't have any beef with him or anything now. It was just like it was competition.
Okay.
He's got a reputation for doing a little drinking even on fight week and
Yeah.
stuff. Did you run into him, or was it
Yeah,
a mess?
I think actually like the night of weigh-ins or something, he got my phone number and like was like, I'm gonna beat your ass or something, and then hung up the phone, and I was like, well, what the hell is that? Whatever. But yeah, I mean, it was so long ago, shit, I can't even hardly remember. But,
So
yeah.
after
It's
the
funny
bout,
'cause my boy Jeremy Stevens hit me up about like 6 months ago, and he was like, hey, I finally got revenge for you. And I was like, what? And he was like, Drew Fickett came in to Alliance today and I beat him up. And I was like, oh man. And he's like, no, I'm just joking, I was cool with it. He was cool. So yeah.
yeah, so after the bout, Drew had some words and had some theatrics afterward. So you lose your first fight, and Steve Mazzagatti was the referee, and you wrote out on your shield, like, there's certain fighters that they kind of do the same thing over and over again, and you watch 2 or 3 of their fights, and you're just like, all right, great fighter, but not so much on the entertaining side. Josh, I've watched probably about 16, 17 of your fights. Every single one is just an absolute barn burner, and it shocks me that you've only got 2 fight of the night bonuses. Like every single one is just it's incredible. So Steve Mazzagatti has to be told by Drew Fickett that there's issues. You should check on a guy, of which obviously you wrote on your shield. You get cut after that fight. You go back to the independent scene. You go 2-1, and you get a win over Forrest Petz and Alex Carter, and then you sign back with the UFC again.
Yeah, I actually took the fight on a week's notice. I actually was helping Spencer Fisher because he had a fight, and then they called me the week before, and whoever was supposed to fight Melvin Guillard dropped out. They got hurt, or I don't know. They didn't make it to the fight. So like, hey, will you fight Melvin Guillard? And I was like, well, I'm already going there as Spencer's corner. I'm already training. So yeah, sure. Can you guys reimburse me for the flight that I bought? And so they're like, yeah, we'll reimburse you for the flight. And yeah, that's how I took that fight.
So, did you still corner Spencer? Did you do both, the 2-for-1 deal?
No, okay. I didn't corner Spencer.
So he fights Melvin Guillard. They're both 22 years old. And you're looking at 2 22-year-olds, obviously. And Josh's record at the time is 15-3-1. Incredibly, like, respectful. Melvin Guillard's is 37-5-3.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fights, man.
But mine really probably should have been about that too, because a lot of my amateur fights were really pro fights, but they're not on my record as pro fights because, you know, in Iowa, we didn't even have a sanctioning body till I don't even know when, like 2008 or something. Yeah. But I fought probably, well, it wouldn't be Melvin's record, but I have probably 10 pro fights as an amateur. You know, Houston's one of them.
Right.
Yeah. Man, I'm the same way. I got like 10 fights, probably 10 to 15 wins that they don't have on my record because they went back through into like Indiana or wherever I was fighting. They have sanctioning bodies, so they just took them all away. So I'm like, I don't care, whatever, man. But I do remember this. So
better.
Huh?
Well, it make your record look better.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The all wins, man. They didn't take away any losses. Bullshit.
Yeah.
But, man, I remember once I had this guy I used to train with, and he hits me up. I'm like, I'm someplace. He's like, hey man, can I borrow a pair of shorts, fight shorts? I'm like, yeah, why? And he's like, man, I got to fight. I'm like, you ain't been training. He's like, I know. I'm like, who you fighting? Josh Neer. I was like, oh shit, man. You know, his name was Todd Kaiser. I think he went up there Didn't even last a couple. He beat his ass really quick, man. I was like, get the right guy to fight on last minute notice, man. What are you doing? He's like, I know, I just want to fight. I was like, all right, man, keep the shorts. But it was, you beat his ass really quick. It's like, bad idea, man. Don't take that fight on last minute notice. He did, but whatever.
Well, Melvin is like, at this point, he was like my first introduction to like a cartoon character. So he's running around with Snoopy, slippers on, he's kind of ostentatious in the way he dresses. And that first round, man, dude, you took on some hellacious ground and pound. Like, you absorbed so much of Melvin's power. And, Josh, one of your trademarks is always bleeding in a fight at some point or another. And you get a nasty gash over your eye where the doctor comes in and, they clear you to fight. And at which point, you land a triangle in the second round. First round.
Yeah.
First round.
End of the first,
And if you guys know Melvin, he doesn't handle losses very well. And on this one, I shook his hand. I stood here. I let you raise his hand. I don't really accept this, but I do, but I don't. But I want that rematch. And that's kind of a reoccurring theme in your UFC career too. Every time you got to win, the person would be like, well, I'm not real happy with this. I want another shot.
Yeah.
I have a question. At this point, do you already have the nickname, the Dentist, and how did that come about?
Yeah, I already had it. I got it as an amateur. So, the fights at Toad Holler, you could fight every week. And I did this fight, and I knocked this guy's teeth out. And and then so I knocked his teeth out, and then the next week I knocked another guy's teeth out. And so the ring announcer is like, dude, you're always knocking people's teeth out. I'm going to start calling you the Dentist. And I was like, okay. I didn't really like it. I was like, all right. And then he just started announcing me, the Dentist, Josh Neer. And then it just kind of stuck. And then people, everyone else started calling me it. I'm like, all right, whatever, it's cool. Because I don't like when people give themselves their own nickname. So I'm like, all right, cool. Like, someone gave me my nickname, so I'm cool with that.
Yeah,
I'm a firm believer. You can't give yourself a nickname, man. We make fun of people who try to do that shit. So someone's got to give it to you. And a lot of times, like, it ain't good, but a lot of times it is. But I like the Dentist. I think it's great.
I got one for you. Like, you remember the Red King? Come on, that's one he made up for himself. That's embarrassing.
Who was that?
There's Rory.
Rory McDonald.
Rory McDonald, the Red King. Come on.
What the hell is the Red King?
What the hell is the Red King, dude?
Yeah.
So that was fight of the night. That was the first real sample, just a little taste of what Josh Neer brings to the cage. Okay, so now the Ultimate Fighter, it's a huge infomercial for the UFC. And Joe Stevenson wins it, and he's got a lot of momentum behind him. And they put him up against Josh in Josh's third UFC fight. Josh, why don't you explain what takes place during that bout?
Yeah, I mean, the first round, I don't remember. I mean, I remember I felt like I won all three rounds, but at some point he had me in a knee bar where it hurt, but like I don't like to tap out, so I'm not gonna tap out to a knee bar, So I survived that, and then I felt like I dominated the fight. It wasn't really that competitive in my opinion.
It was embarrassing. It was embarrassing for the UFC because they were just springboarding off how popular Tough One was, and they really miscalculated in regards to the opponent for the new poster boy of the UFC. And at the end of the fight, which Josh obviously won by decision, you mentioned that you wanted to move down to 155.
Yeah, that's what kind of sucks about that fight too, is like after I beat him, then he went on a run. He won like 4 or 5 fights, and he got a title shot against BJ Penn. And so I want to move down to 55 too after I beat him, and the UFC wouldn't let me. They said, well, there's already Spencer and Jens Pulver at 55. If you move down, then you're gonna have to fight your teammates. And I wasn't gonna fight my teammates, so I was like, well, I guess I'll stay at 170. But I wanted to go down to 55. It kind of, it sucked for me because like after I beat him is when Joe Stevenson went on his run and then ended up getting the title shot. And, I had to continue to fight at 170.
So Matt Hughes was one of the coaches on Tough 2, and I think he was Joe's coach on that season. Did that help in the preparation for that fight?
Not really. I mean, was he Matt's coach?
I know he was at Tough 2.
I thought he was on the other team.
You know what? He may have been on the other team.
I think so. And
I thought he was on Matt's team, wasn't he?
Oh, he was?
I'm not sure, but I thought so.
I just remember him like kind of talking crap about Matt though too, and then I was like, man, I don't like this guy, and I don't like Mark. I don't like Mark Laimon either, and that was his coach. Remember Mark Laimon?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like that guy either. So I was like, yeah, I want that fight.
Yeah, so Laimon was in his corner. What was the issue between you and Mark?
I don't never even met that guy, but it's kind of funny because Jake Ellenberger. Do you remember on the Ultimate Fighter when Matt Serra like punked Mark Laimon? That's literally my favorite. Oh, yeah. That's Chris. You were on that season, right?
I was there when that happened, dude. I was there. Nobody liked Mark on our. Nobody liked Mark. He was a prick. And when Matt went off on we talked about that.
When I was like the biggest fan of Matt Serra. I'm like, Matt Serra's the man. Because it's like, dude, you don't even fight. And you're sitting over here talking crap about Royce Gracie, dude. And it's funny because it's like he thought he was just going to get away with it. And then like Matt was like, just totally punked him. And he's like, well, can I have an opinion? And just, I'm like, man, I hate people like that. It's like, dude, if you don't fight, then shut your mouth. That's
what Matt said. He's like, no, you can't have an opinion unless you're going to step out there. Shut the hell up. That was great, dude.
Yeah. I loved it. Like, that's literally my favorite episode of The Ultimate Fighter to this day. That's funny. I love that. And like that. I wasn't even a fan of Matt Serra until then, and then I was like his biggest fan. I'm like, Matt Serra's the man.
Man, Matt's cool as hell. If you hung out with him for 10 minutes, you'd be like, I love this guy, man. He's real cool.
I met him after that and stuff, and he was always cool whenever I seen him.
Yeah. But. Just to clean it up, I checked that Joe Stevenson was on Team Hughes. He was on Team Hughes.
Man.
Yep. And Laimon is one of those guys that jiu-jitsu black belt. He actually won an Abu Dhabi trial, went to Abu Dhabi and stuff, but he became like, he didn't do MMA. So there is that controversy. And there's some people that, that hold that against him, I guess.
just like the guys now. And that's what I like about like Gordon Ryan. Like he, I don't know, maybe he does, but I don't ever see him like giving his opinions and like, just like, downgrading, this and that fighter. It's like, dude, if you don't get punched in the face, if you've never got punched in the face, just keep your opinion to yourself, because I don't want
to. Keeps it to the mat. Or he keeps it. Yeah, Gordon Ryan keeps it to the mat. So look at like the trajectory of the opponents that they're feeding Josh. All right. So Drew Fickett, I think he took second in Arizona in high school for wrestling. Melvin Guillard absolutely is a state champion for New Orleans. Joe Stevenson, I think either took first or second in the state of California for wrestling in high school. And then they feed him Utah State wrestling champion, Josh Berkman. So it's like they keep sending these real high-end wrestlers at you. Was that a hard fight in your head going into this bout, or what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, my problem is I do good with guys that are like technical and guys that like, fight the way that like you should fight, I guess. I don't really know how to explain it, but Josh Berkman was just like wild. He just made stuff up, you know. And I struggle with those guys because it's like those guys, you know, like you don't know what they're gonna throw. He just kind of just runs forward and throws all hard. And it's like, so I just kind of struggle with, you know, guys that aren't that technical. But I remember it was a good fight. I remember I thought I won that fight. I went back and watched it, and then I was like, yeah, he probably did win, because I thought I was winning the first round or something, and then I was like, dude, I won. I thought I won the second round, but then I was like, how did I lose that fight? And then I'm like, they're like, well, you got dropped the first round, and I didn't remember that I got dropped, but it was just a flash drop, you know, like he just spazzed out and hit me with something hard. And I went down to my knee, and then I got right back up. But, you know, I mean, you can't really win a round when you get dropped.
So Josh, what do you do for cardio at this point in your career?
I've always did a lot of running, and I hate weightlifting. So, I mean, I have lifted weights and stuff, and then basically just train, just, you know, do jiu-jitsu, wrestling, boxing. You know, that's my cardio, and running.
Josh is a real pressure heavy style.
Oh, yeah.
And Berkman catches him in the first couple exchanges where Josh has to recover and scramble. But even in his recovering during the fight, he keeps that pressure on. And by the end of the first round, and Josh Neer ate several fastballs. I mean, Berkman was throwing home run punches and landing, and Josh just kept putting the pressure on him. And by the end of the first round, you saw Berkman just, oh my God, like he's like, whoa, this guy's not going away. And you saw him struggling in order to keep up the cardio. And in between first and second round and second and third round, Pat Miletich is just like losing his mind, begging you to keep stepping up the pace because Berkman was bending. And in that second round, you won. And in the third round, I think it was just a positioning.
I think I got taken down. No, I never got.
He held it.
Yeah, we went to a decision, but I think he just kind of took me down and held me down. But
and you had Robbie.
I remember he was like really fast. Like, same with Melvin Guillard, and Eddie Alvarez was one of them too. It's like their level changes are really good. They do a good job of like level changing and just catching you. They're just fast. They would catch me with stuff that I didn't really see.
And I'd say it's to your credit. You had a cut over your left eye, and I'm going to be, dude, these cuts, they're not small. I mean, the cuts that I'm mentioning. At some point, there's a couple fights where Josh's like, yeah, I really couldn't see out of the eye because the blood was just kind of pooling in it while I was fighting off my back. And man, that scar tissue, that's something, something crazy that you have to deal with. All right, so that's July. And Josh obviously is you don't seem like a guy that parties a lot outside, like when you were in your UFC, outside of your fight, because you're in such good shape. Like you're not slacking on that. And Thiago Alves gets sick, and he pulls off a bout on August 26, 2006, UFC 62. You fight the elder of the Diaz brothers, Nick.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. You know, I still want to fight Thiago Alves. So if
bare knuckle, baby, bare knuckle.
Yeah, I tried to make it happen. David said that I agreed to everything, and then they said, Thiago's manager doesn't want to do the fight. We're gonna go in a different direction. I'm like, whatever. Really? He didn't want to fight me UFC 62 either. So imagine that.
Yeah. So you fight Nick Diaz, and there's a couple times where Miguel, I, and Chris were talking at this time, and there's two instances where I would have lost money on a pre-UFC bet. Kara Parisian fought Nick Diaz, and they didn't fight at weigh-ins. I lost. I thought that would have happened.
Yeah.
And for sure, I'm like, Nick Diaz, Josh Neer at weigh-ins, punches will be thrown. Like I lost money. Like I lost money twice on the Diaz brothers. There seemed to be some mutual respect. Did that extend itself prior to the fight as well, or was it earned during the bout?
It was like, it's kind of weird because Nick's always been like controversial. I didn't really have an opinion on him, you know, before the fight. It was just like, you know, like I was just more worried about myself. So I wasn't really like, I didn't have opinions on other fighters. And I think it was mutual respect. I think some people just know, like, not to, you know, not to cross the line. I feel like I'm like that, you know, and I feel like he's obviously like that too. So I think it was just a mutual respect that, you know, we didn't get in a fight or anything. I remember seeing him before. We were like walking in the hallways or whatever, crossing paths, and he just kind of like gave me a head nod and just kept walking by, and I did the same thing. And that was really it. You know, there wasn't ever any beef or anything. It's kind of crazy because actually when I fought him, that's when I like kind of started to be a fan of his, because I just remember like at the UFCs, it's like all the like UFC workers, like usually whenever I go into a fight, I feel like they always wanted me to lose. And then I remember this fight is like all of a sudden they're like, hey, I hope you kick Nick's ass. And I was like, what the fuck? You guys have never said this to me before. All of a sudden you guys like me. All of a sudden I'm your favorite guy. I thought you guys always want me to lose. And, you know, like, so a couple of the employees were like, good luck, kick Nick's ass. And I was like, damn, well, that's probably why he doesn't have a good relationship with the UFC. You know, it's like, if they're saying this to his opponent, it's like, man, like, obviously, you know,
And back to him for sure.
He doesn't feel welcome there. And so that's when I actually was like, man, like, he does like have a legitimate like
pressure,
you know, something to complain about. Because I remember like back then, dude, he only made like $10,000 when he fought me, and he was like a big draw. And then after he fought me, I think he fought someone else, and then he left, and he went from like 10-10 to like 50-50 and Strike Force or Elite XC or whatever it was called. And so like that's when I actually started to like Nick, is the week of our fight.
Man, you know what's funny? Like I remember I fought Nick a long time ago, and then ever since when I'd see them, you know, him and Nate, they both treated me great, you know, and I think they like realness, and if they feel like you're a phony, you talk shit about this, or you embellish whatever, you act like you're something you're not, they call that shit out and they don't like it. But I think I've never heard Nate be so complimentary as he was when he fought you. So they like you for the same reason. I think this dude just grind. He's a tough ass dude who's coming to fight. That's all. You're a real fighter. You know what I mean? Because they were like real fighters. Some of these guys, they fight because of the money or because they're on TV. They wouldn't fight if you were getting paid $100. And we both did that shit. So we're real fighters. That's why they like us, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. I'm the same way. You know, that's part of the reason why I did this podcast. So I'm like, man, like Chris Lytle's a real fighter, you know. So I definitely think that they think the same way, you know.
100% guaranteed.
I was gonna say exactly the same thing, Josh. I was gonna say they don't do a lot of interviews either. If we get them, we definitely gotta have Chris aboard. We ain't gonna get nowhere without.
Yeah, it's funny because when I was at Nick's house back in the day, I didn't even realize that he fought Chris. Yeah. He was like, man, I don't know what he was talking about. He was going on one of his fucking just talking sprees. And he was like, man, I fucking fought Chris Lytle when I was like fucking 18 and this and that. I was like, oh, damn, you fought Chris? Was he 18 when he fought you?
I thought he was like 19 or 20. He was young.
Yeah.
He was a last minute fill, and I was supposed to fight Jake Sears. And they're like, oh, this guy's won grappler's quest. He's undefeated. I'm like, I already fought in the UFC. It's like, fuck, I beat this nerd, whatever. And then I lost a split decision, man. I was about to quit fighting after that. I was like, I got beat by some 19-year-old kid. I was like, maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. I'm like, and I was, and then about a year later, he's in the UFC. He's beating people. So I was like, okay, I don't feel so bad.
Yeah, that's what he said. Because someone was talking about, they were talking about the Robbie Lawler fight. And he was like, I think he fought you before he fought Robbie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was like, man, he was like, I fought Chris Lytle and all these other good guys. And so when I fought Robbie, I was like going into the fight like, dude, I already fought all these badass dudes. Like, I'm not going to be scared of Robbie.
And he knocked him out. And I remember I was at that fight. I fought that same night. Now I talked to him. He was ultra confident when he was going to fight Robbie Lawler. I was like, man, Nick's just tough as hell, man. I mean, you just know that.
He was ultra confident when everybody was scared.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Everybody else was afraid of Robbie. And I was like, that's one thing helped me when I fought Robbie. I wasn't afraid of him. And it was a good fight, and then Nick had the same attitude. Too? Yeah.
Well, how did that go?
I lost the decision, but it was a close fight. It was a real good fight, man. It was a fun one. If you ever watched
UFC,
it in UFC? Yeah.
Oh dang! What UFC 45?
45. Yeah, we had a good one, man. You need to check it out.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to go watch that.
So Josh, during your fight, you guys were talking shit to each other, but it wasn't like I'm gonna get you. It's like, oh, that's what you got? Okay, let me have it. And Josh, when Nick or Nate Diaz, they're known for their cardio, obviously. Oh. And during the bout, you'll see them talk shit like, yeah, come on, come with that some more. In the second round, Josh Neer was doing that to Nick Diaz, and it was just a battle of wills and cardio. And I think that's what won the fight for Nick in the third round. Like, his cardio was superior to a guy who I was shocked. I'm shocked at looking at your fights at how good a shape that you're in. And Nick's cardio was it was better. And it's insane to me to even think of it that way.
Nick's cardio is on another level, man. Like, he, in his prime, like, he was, he does triathlons and all that stuff. It's like, man, that guy, his cardio is on another level.
Well, who's that? Garrity we had on here is like, I've never seen guys who train that much. All they do is train, smoke weed, and that's it. That's all they'll do is sit there and go. It was a light day. It was like a 10-mile run and a swim, bike.
And their day off.
Yeah.
And their day off from training. Yeah.
Yeah.
They had him do a triathlon. It's like.
Yeah. I remember like one of the first times when I went out and started training with Nick and Nate, we like went for a run. And we were at this pond, and Nick was like, I bet I could swim across. It was like a lake, or I don't know, a big pond. I don't know what's the difference between a lake and a pond, but he was like, I bet I could swim across that. And I'm like thinking, yeah, you probably could. And then he jumps in and he swims all the way across it. But I didn't really know why. I'm like, dude, you just want to prove that you could swim across it or what? Good job. But yeah, we did this hard run, and we were all gassed out. Well, I was gassed out. I don't know. Nate and Nick were probably good, and then Nick was like, yeah, I bet I could swim across that. And then I'm like, okay. And then he jumped in and swam across it.
Man.
What's crazy? Did you guys hang out afterward that night
with Nick?
With Nick on that fight night?
No,
there was a mutual respect there. That
I didn't really become friends with them until after. It was actually right before I fought Nate. Me and Nate fought Kurt Pellegrino, and I fought Dean Thomas. And we're on the same card, and then my boxing coach was like, "Hey, let's get a picture with Nick." And I'm like, "Okay." And so we went and took a picture with Nick and then with Nate too. And we're like, you know, that was the first time I even ever met Nate. He was in the UFC, but I never crossed paths with him or anything. And we took a picture, and then UFC seen it, and then they're like, and then literally like the next week, then they're like, they call me like, "We want you to be in main event against Nate Diaz." I'm like, "Oh man, come on! I just made friends with this guy." So, I'm like, "I like him. I have to fight him," and so then we had to fight.
So you had mentioned Din Thomas. That's when you had your relationship. So here's the thing. So after the Nick Diaz fight, which, dude, it's incredibly entertaining. It really is. And Josh, you take these short little steps. You march people down with short little steps because you don't want to stretch yourself out because you're constantly throwing punches. And it's a beautiful fight to watch. The UFC cuts him again for the second time. How did you get that? How did that conversation go?
Well, they didn't really cut me because actually I mean, they did, but they didn't. I actually asked for my release just because I felt like I was outclassed in that fight. I just felt like I need to get better. And because before I did the fight, they said, "Well, we won't cut you whether you win or you lose because you're taking this fight on like a week's notice." Well, I mean, really, Nick was taking the fight, but I was supposed to fight Thiago Alves, and he pulled out. And so they said, "Well, if you take this fight, then we won't cut you whether you win or you lose." And I actually asked for my release just because I felt like I needed to get better, and I wanted to go down to 155.
Oh yeah.
And they were still being weird about that, not letting me go down to 55.
So he goes 6-1 on the indie scene, including wins over TJ Wahlberger, who's a future UFC vet. So like you're still just mowing people down. And they bring him back April 2nd, 2008 to get Chris against one of your buddies, Din Thomas.
Yeah.
Who is super tough and always in shape as well. Did you why don't you take us through the fight? Like what were your thoughts of it?
Well, actually, I ended up fighting Dean because I got signed after my release. I got signed by Pride, and I was supposed to fight at 160 because I told you I wanted to go down in weight, and I got signed by Pride, and then UFC bought Pride, and then that's how I got back into UFC. So really, I got signed by Pride, and then UFC bought Pride, and so that's how I got back into the UFC.
Who was Pride going to match you against?
Man,
did you get a name?
Sakurai, I think.
Okay, Hayato Sakurai.
I forget what's his first name.
Hayato.
Yeah, Hayato Sakurai. I was supposed to fight him.
Okay, he's not bad.
I think they were gonna do that fight, and then if I won that fight, then I probably would have fought Gomi.
Oh, dude, you know what, man?
Because that
would have been fun to watch.
At the time, Gomi was like the number one guy.
Stud.
And Sakurai was like the number 2 guy, I think. So.
Yep, and let me ask you: is Monty doing the wheeling and dealing for you? Is he your manager throughout all this?
Yeah, that was my manager at the time. Yeah.
Okay, good. He had a couple. I've just noticed that he had a couple of people ask for their release from the UFC and got them better deals. Like Tim Sylvia. Tim Sylvia is another one. So and you mentioned that you kind of always felt like they wanted you to lose and stuff. That may be because of Monty too, you know, because he had so many guys. And
yeah, they didn't like Monty too much. They didn't like Pat at the time either because the IFL at the time was going on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he's in your corner. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when I fought Nick, Pat was in my corner, and that at that time Dana and Pat like had beef or whatever the issue is, and people are like, "Oh, like, man, you better not have Pat cornering you. And I was like, for why? What do you mean? They're like, well, Dana don't like him. I was like, I don't give a shit. Like, that's Dana's problem. I don't really care. And so Pat was in my corner. I remember Dana came in our locker room, and Dana was like, "Oh, you brought this guy?" And I was like, "Yep." And then he kind of just walked out the door.
Oh,
Remember,
it was like that.
I mean, I think he might have shook people's hands and stuff. I mean, Chris probably remembers it back in the day. Like, Dana would go in the locker room and, just shake hands and say hi to everyone or whatever, and that night, Pat was in our locker room and he didn't stay very long.
Yeah, he gave Randy Couture the same kind of treatment when Couture's kids fought for him too. Yeah. So just another example of Dana being Dana.
He kind of two-piece Couture. Said, Dad can't corner you, and I'm getting your kid's ass kicked. I mean, he kind of, like you gave him a 1-2 punch on that one. So did Thomas.
I've always been cool with Dana. Like, I don't have no beef or anything with him. It's just like, I'm loyal to my coaches though. So if you have a problem with them, that's on you.
So John Fitch had talked to us about the UFC was constantly trying to separate him from his management in regards to just wheeling and dealing and conversations. And John always shut those opportunities down immediately and just go, no, don't talk to me. Talk to my manager.
Yeah.
Did you have those types of situations going on with the UFC as well?
Not really, because I didn't have their numbers. I didn't want their numbers or anything. So it's like whenever they needed me, they would call my manager. So
I can see that. Yeah, Neer ain't playing with that shit, dude. Neer, it ain't happening.
Yeah.
So Den Thomas, it was your second time at 155, and it seemed like, due to the weight cut, it seemed to me that in the first round.
No, that was my first fight. That was my first fight at 55.
It was.
Yeah.
Okay, they mentioned on the fight that it was your second time. I couldn't find the first time. I just figured there may have been a mistake in your record.
I had a fight before that. It was at 160, but it wasn't at 55.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So did that weight cut affect your output?
I made weight easy then, because when I was fighting at 70 the first time, I was only walking around at like 178, 175, So the first time when I fought Dean Thomas, I made weight easy. That was my easiest cut to 55.
Who helped you with your diet?
Huh?
Who helped you with your diet?
Myself.
Really?
Yeah, I just worked out a whole bunch, I only had it was only like 20 pounds. After I fought at 55 though, it's like my body, then I started walking around like 85 and 90, and I got up to like 95, and it was weird because when I was fighting at 70, I was only walking around at like 178. And then after I went down to 55, it's like my body like start thinking it was dying or something.
Yeah.
And people tell me then it like stores fat or whatever. And then after a while, then it was like super hard for me to make 55. And then I had to go back up to 70.
Man, I was talking to Anthony Smith not too long ago. He went up to 205. He said when he'd get down to 85, he'd get up to 230. He said that when he quit doing that, he said, I'm not doing that. Now he never gets that high anymore. It's the exact same thing you're talking about. Like his body would just go like, I need it. And when he try and cut too low, it'd blow way up. So that's very interesting, man. I didn't realize that. That's nuts.
Yeah.
What's one of the more interesting takeaways from that fight as well, other than Josh, you were a freight train against Din. But Josh has got Monty Cox as manager and Matt Hughes in his corner. And Jen Thomas has got Eve Edwards and Dan Lambert, who owns the American Top Team. So it's just kind of
very good corners and stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. You got one fighter and one administration, guy.
Yeah, that was a weird fight because like I always had respect for Dean. That was actually probably the only fight that I really didn't want to do. But it's like they pretty much were like, oh, this is who you're fighting. If you don't want to fight him, then too bad, then you won't fight. So I'm like, all right, I guess I'll fight Dean.
So on UFC Fight Night 15, you had mentioned earlier, it's Omaha, Nebraska, which is 2 hours away from where you live. And you're the 155-pound main event against Nate Diaz. So how does that fight kind of come about, like in your opinion? And why don't you take us through it?
Yeah, I mean, the fight pretty much happened how I told you. The UFC seen me and Nate taking a picture together, being kind of friendly. And so they're like, oh, well, we'll have you guys fight each other.
Yeah, so, let's ruin this friendship right away.
Yeah, exactly.
That happens quite a bit. And so Nate also was on The Ultimate Fighter as well. That's kind of a recurring theme in your UFC career. And he was also coached by Jens Pulver.
Yeah.
Did Jens, this is the second guy from, that was coached by a Miletich coach. Did Jens help you at your preparation in regards to Nate?
Yeah, he did a little bit, but not that much. I'm trying to remember. I mean, basically, Pat trained me for that fight. Like, I remember that fight, like the Dean Thomas and the Nate Diaz fight are the two fights that I probably trained the hardest my whole career. Like I like really put everything into both of those fights, and yeah, I mean, Jen's always helped me out, but it wasn't ever like, well, Nate does this or that or anything, it wasn't ever like that.
Okay.
Here's the thing. You kind of know how Nate's going to fight. You slick off his back.
Yeah.
A lot of, I mean, there was no secret. It's not like he'd be like, he does this secret move. Man, well, none of that. Just train him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I remember going into the fight, I actually wanted to submit him because I was like, I felt like my jiu-jitsu was really good. And I was like, and I like knew that he was like hyped up as like this really good jiu-jitsu guy. So, and at the time I was training with Rodrigo Zeta. He was just a little Brazilian guy that he was at our gym. He was like one of the jiu-jitsu coaches, and I was training a lot with him, and I was like, I'm gonna submit him, so I always go, I don't have the greatest game plans. I always like, I'm hard-headed. I always want to beat people at whatever they're good at,
Yeah.
So if I fight someone that's a stand-up fighter, I want to knock them out. If I fight a jiu-jitsu guy, I want to submit them. So
I couldn't find much on El Zeta, but your ground game, it went through the roof in regards to like your bottom activity. And I was shocked at how good you were on the ground and just how aggressive you were on the offense.
Yeah, because right before that fight, I fought Mac Danzig, and he never had been submitted by anyone. I think I was the first one that submitted him, and he was either a brown belt or a black belt at the time.
And Mac Danzig was tough.
Yeah, Danzig's actually your next
he
fight.
He won the Ultimate Fighter, huh?
I think Danzig's actually your next bout.
Oh yeah, actually, yeah. Never mind. Yeah, Danzig was after that, but yeah, I was working my jiu-jitsu a lot, at that time. And,
hey, Chris, you got muted.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I was working my jiu-jitsu a lot at that time, so I was, really trying to get my jiu-jitsu right.
With Nate, one of the things that like blew me away is, the Diaz's, they're pure attitude, and it's not like it's a phony thing. Like that's just who they are. You figure it out or beat me. It's kind of one of those types of situations. And Nate went out of his way to put you over with that crowd in his post-fight speech.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just a mutual respect, you know, just like, you know, I think that's how he is with everyone. Anyone that, you know, like his last fight against Leon Edwards, you know, that he wants to fight winners. He wants to fight, you know, the real fighters. He ain't trying to fight, you know, all the clout chasers, and, you know, he wants to fight the best guys. So
were you at the altercation where Clay Guida and Nate got into a fight backstage?
No, I wasn't there, but I mean, I know what's Clay's brother's name? Jason Guida, right?
Jason.
He's a wild man, dude. He there's lots of stories about him at Miletich at MFS. I think a couple of the guys beat him up somewhere at one of the fights too. So yeah, I don't know anything about that. I don't know what happened. Nate told me what happened, but I don't even remember what he said. I think Clay went up to him and was like, yeah, good fight or something. And he's like, I want to fight you. And then Nate was like what? And then like they just started fighting or something. I don't know what happened.
It's weird because, man, I've hung out with Clay Guida before. He's great, man. That seems weird. You know what I mean? I think he's super cool. So I don't get it.
But Clay's a little weird too. Like,
it's true.
I don't know him like that either. But I mean, it sounds like something that he would say. And like to fighters, you don't do that.
Yeah,
I
can see Nate and Nick both are like, I think they see that as a sign of disrespect. Well, I don't think Clay meant it that way, but I think they're like pissed off. You know what I mean? So I can see that. It makes sense.
Yeah, you ain't gonna go up to them and be like, I want to fight you.
Right?
Like,
let's do it.
If you say that, then they're gonna fight you right there.
Right there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think that's what happened, but I don't know the whole story.
Well, it's kind of like, oh, that's your wish. Here, let me grant it for you. Like now. Yeah. I got you covered.
Yeah.
Jason Guida, Jason is like, he's like a heavyweight, like a 230 and stuff. He never made UFC, wasn't quite that level, but he's probably doing with like 60, 70 fights too. So he could get stupid in there.
Yeah. I think he was on the Ultimate Fighter and then he didn't make weight or something, right? Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, he got on the Ultimate Fighter and then he didn't make weight and then got kicked off or something.
So you have like a 6-month off period. Did you get injured in the Diaz fight?
No. If I would not have tapped out, my arm would have been broken. That was the only time that I've ever tapped in a fight was against Nick. Or are you talking about Nate?
I'm talking about Nate. You lost the split decision. And one of the coolest things that you saw is they announced, the first judge goes with Josh Neer. Josh just shakes his head and he's like, man, I didn't win this fight. And it just kind of said, no, man, this isn't a game. This isn't, let me just kind of give me the decision, say I won, even though I didn't win, and I don't care, I'm going to jump around. You were like, no. I didn't win this fight. I'm not, even if you announce me as winner, I'm not taking it. It was one of those types of situations that was about to unfold, but Nate got the split decision victory.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, I felt like he won the fight.
But it was a good one. It was very good.
Yeah, it was probably close and stuff, but I felt like he won. So I'm not trying to take someone's win when I didn't win.
No, for sure you can't do that. You go up against Mac Danzig next. So Mac Danzig wins the Ultimate Fighter Season 6. And like I said, it's a showcase. It's a big infomercial. And when those guys come to the big leagues, the UFC, it's guaranteed that they're going to have big ratings going with them. And comes out, fights Clay Guida, kind of gets steamrolled. So they say, okay, let's put him up against Josh Neer. And it is a phenomenal fight. Yeah.
It's kind of crazy because that's a fight I didn't really train very hard at all for that fight. I was like, I didn't really train that hard. That was when I split up with my daughter's mom and stuff, and I was just going through a whole bunch of personal stuff, and I went on a high-speed chase 6 weeks before that or 5 weeks before that, and I just wasn't in the right place. But I went into that fight like mentally, just like, I'm not gonna lose this fight no matter what. So it was more of like a mental thing than anything. But I was like partying all the time and not doing what I should do. And it's weird. Like sometimes you'll train like as hard as like super hard, and then you'll lose. And then, you know, this was the time. This is probably the only fight in my career that I didn't really train and just screwed off and did this stuff that I shouldn't do. And then I go out and like look really good.
So Mac Danzig is like a real technical fighter. He's very technical, whether it's on the ground or standing up. He's here. Josh is clearly a type B guy. He opens up the box. He's going to put together whatever it is without reading the instructions. Danzig's the guy that carefully, meticulously reads every step of the instructions and kind of puts things together. And when you go up against somebody like Josh Neer, you tend to get bullied. And that's kind of what took place in that fight. Would you not agree?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I went into that fight just mentally, like, it's like kill or be killed. It's not like I don't go into that fight like that all the time, but this fight for sure is just like, sometimes you feel like when you don't have anything to lose, that's when you're the most dangerous. And that's how like mentally I was, just like, I don't have anything to lose. Like, I'm just going to take this guy out. However, and on top of it, it helped that he was a Mark Laimon guy too.
Mark was in his corner.
Like
Mark was in his corner.
You this is the second time they've had a guy who wins the Ultimate Fighter. They're giving him. Do you feel like in a way like, and what pissed on these? I mean, do you feel like it's in a way disrespectful, or do you like it's a happy to get the opportunity to fight these guys who are overhyped in your opinion?
Yeah, that's how I felt. I felt like they were overhyped, you know, and I felt like they're overhyped and they really weren't that good, you know. I was like, you know, the like, I love Nate and stuff, but I feel like the good guys are the guys that are getting into the UFC without getting on the Ultimate Fighter. I always look down on the guy on the Ultimate Fighter guys. I'm like, man,
it's a bad contract too.
Yeah, I'm like, these guys don't even deserve to be here. They got on here. They got in here from a TV show. Like, come on, man.
I feel like people were chomping at the bit trying to get anybody from the Ultimate Fighter. Like, this guy's overhyped and he's not worth it. And I'm going to build a name off. Everybody wanted to fight this. So I didn't know how you saw that, but that's great.
Yeah. Now you had also mentioned that you signed with Pride and then the UFC bought Pride. Are you happy with your compensation at this point? Because they're still running you through, you know, every tough guy they can find.
No, dude, all my fights, I never made more than my opponent, even when I won and my opponent lost. Like, even when I fought Dean Thomas, I made like, I don't remember what I made, but I think it was like 20,000 or something to win. And I think Dean Thomas made like 30,000. I'm like, bro, like, I never really got compensated how I felt like I should have got compensated.
Yeah, do you think that's because you didn't socialize like some of the other guys? Do you think that's where that comes down to?
I mean, probably, which like I understand too, but yeah, I just felt like I was always underpaid.
With the bonuses too, like, I mean, you know, you said, hey, you know, the UFC's got people in the locker rooms. They're there. They saw you take a picture and stuff. But when it comes down to handing out the bonuses, they all forgot about you.
Yeah, I think what did I get? Like four bonuses.
I thought I saw two. Was there four? I saw two fight of the night bonuses.
2 fight of the night.
No, I didn't see any knockout or submission bonus.
I got submission of the night too.
Okay.
When
I didn't see that.
When I fought, I think it was when I fought,
may have been Danzig.
no, I should have got a bonus for that. I got fight of the night for that. When I fought Melvin Guillard, I got submission of the night.
You got fight of the night against Danzig. So let me tie this up. So Mac Danzig is a black belt under Mark Laimon. He's somebody that they catered an entire TV show around, thinking that he was such a hot prospect. He's 29 years old. He's coming in at 19, 5-1, wins tough 6, coming off a loss with Guida. I think that it shocked the UFC that this hot prospect is struggling so much. And you're talking about a high-end jiu-jitsu black belt with all the pedigrees and decorations, and Josh Neer submits him and makes him look stupid on the ground.
Yeah.
A Miletich fighting system guy. Just one of those ground and pound guys, puts on a clinic against Mac Danzig.
Yeah. Mark Laimon was in his corner. That's why. He picked the wrong coach.
So shortly after that, they line you up against Kirk Pellegrino at 155. Pellegrino comes into the fight at 19-4. At this point, you're 25-7-1. And again, they put you in a venue 75 miles away from Kirk Pellegrino's house.
Yeah. Yeah, that right then is when I really started to struggle to make 55. Yeah, like I was like struggling like the whole time that I would go in and to my training, it was all just based around losing weight, to just make weight.
Man.
So Kirk Pellegrino is a 2-time state runner-up for the state of New Jersey for wrestling. The other recurring theme that's taking place in your career. And he pins you for 3 rounds. And you were angry at I think what happens is Josh kind of gets off on fighting. Like, it really means a lot to him. And there's certain expectations, even in a loss, that Josh Neer expects, and ass kicking being one of them if you're going to lose. And that didn't happen. It was just you got pinned for 3 rounds.
Yeah, I remember just going into that fight, and like all of his interviews were like, we're going to have this war, like Nick Diaz versus Gomi war, it's like, dude, and then he just wanted to wrestle me the whole time. I'm like, I was just frustrated because I hate when people do that. Eddie Alvarez did that too. And it's like in all their interviews, they act like it's going to be this epic Don Fry and the Japanese guy that he fought. And it's like, dude, the first time you got hit, you just were trying to take me down the whole time. Come on.
Man, that was like a theme for me as well, man. I absolutely hated. Those were my least favorite fights. And UFC try and set me up with a fight. I'm like, I don't want to fight this dude, man. He's going to try and hold me down. Like, oh, no, he's going to stand up with you, Chris. I go, I promise he's not going to. And they wouldn't. They'd blanket me. I'm like, man, I was bored in some of those fights. I'm like, I know people watch. They're like, I'd get so pissed because, like, yeah, I don't mind losing a good fight. I don't. But, I cannot stand guys who want to play it safe and hold you down because, like you said, they'll talk, I'm going to stand. You ain't going to stand with people. Because that's why I appreciate the Warriors, man. People who go out there and bang it out. I have nothing but love for those guys, man. But if you're going to, win at all costs, I can't do it, man. I'm not built for it.
Yeah, and it's like I don't even like I'm a wrestler. I come from wrestling. It's like I don't have a problem with you wrestling me, but it's like try to beat me up or try to submit me when we're on the ground.
Don't hold me.
I love wrestling. Wrestling's great, but it's like, dude, you're just trying to hold me down and win a decision and hope that the clock runs out.
Yep.
That's what he did.
Raise your hand like, oh, I did something great. It's like, dude, you didn't even win. Like, that was my whole thing just with wrestlers. Like, I love wrestling, but it's like, dude, you need to try to beat someone up. If you're going into a fight, then you should try to fight them, not try to just
Yeah.
Control
them down and control them.
You know, I think you had some words with him like, this is really how you wanted to win? You know, something along that nature after the fight stopped. But the one standout thing that I took from this fight, you had Jeremy Stevens back in your corner, an early training partner. Did you leave Miletich at this time and do your training camp back in Des Moines?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, when I fought Mac Danzig is when me and my daughter's mom split up, and then she moved back to Des Moines, and then that's when I moved back here too. It wasn't that far, but it was like, you know, the Quad City's like 2.5 hours, and I didn't want to have to drive back and forth to see my daughter and stuff. And
that's cool.
I ended up moving back to Des Moines. It's not like I'll always be an MFS guy, so it wasn't like I left on bad terms. It was just more personal.
Yeah, if you're gonna choose between
Jeremy was training with me all the time.
Nice.
How difficult was that for you to watch Jeremy and Spencer Fisher fight?
Yeah, I didn't even watch it. To this day, I don't think I've ever watched it. So,
wow.
Yeah, Spencer won, right? A decision or something.
Yeah,
went to a decision.
Yeah. So for those at home, Jeremy Stevens and Josh Neer cut their teeth on the independent circuit. Josh has a fight with Spencer Fisher, moves to Miletich fighting system, and after that, every single fight that Spencer had, you're in his corner, and the majority of your fights, he's in your corner. You could tell there was a special bond there. And, you know, like you said, you had a picture taken with Nate Diaz, and all of a sudden, okay, well, that's our main event. To me, it seemed like, you know, you've got an entire roster of guys. And I even said this in the Spencer Fisher interview. I mean, you got an entire roster of guys. Why those two? Obviously, Chris said because they're both badass and it's a good fight. But it just seemed like it was almost done intentionally just to kind of like prove a point.
Yeah, just to like cause a rift or cause drama. But it didn't even really cause what they wanted to cause, because it's like we both like when I fought Nate, you know, I was like, we were both respecting each other. So it wasn't even, there was no drama that even went into it. It was just a competition.
Okay. You know? Right. And I like to kind of keep moving forward. So I'm going to apologize on this question. Nate Diaz pre-fight, no issues there either.
No.
Any encounters there?
Nope. I didn't even see him until weigh-ins. I'm pretty sure I never seen him at all. It's funny because he went and he trained at Premier Combat, who like Jake Ellenberger and you know, some people that I know train there and stuff, and he went and trained at their gym, but I wasn't there at the time, so I never seen him at all.
All right, Josh, I got UFC Fight Pass. I'm psychotic with YouTube videos. I was looking for those weigh-ins, like on both of them, and they don't exist. I'm like, you walk up on stage, stare at a guy, pose, and leave. And I spent like 3 hours just looking for it. Because I'm like, there has to be something there. There has to be. You got two dudes that are like freight trains and don't play, and they're going to look at each other a few feet from each other. Like, there has to be something there.
Yeah, it's just mutual respect, you know. That's cool. That's how I am with anyone. If I fought Matt Serra or someone like that, it would be like that too. You know.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I got a question for you. So obviously, Nate, you fought both of them. You talked mutual respect there, like throughout. But at some point, you said you went up to the house in Stockton up there. How did that come about? How did you get the phone call? How did you get the invite? How does that work out?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because after we fought, Nate was like, hey, you should come out and train with us sometime. And, you know, I said the same thing. I was like, you should come here. But, you know, he's from Cali. He ain't going to come to Iowa. It's a little bit nicer out in Cali. So I reached out to him. It's funny because I reached out to him. I think it was on Facebook, but it might have been MySpace. And I reached out to one of his. It wasn't the real Nate Diaz. It was just, you know, one of the many imposters pretended to be Nate Diaz. And then I reached out to him. I was like, hey man, we should train or something. And he like never responded back. And then somehow my manager got a hold of Cesar Gracie and got in touch with Cesar, and then Cesar was like, yeah, you can come out. And then I went out there and everything, and then I realized Nate, I was like, bro, I reached out to you on Facebook, you didn't message me back. He was like, dude, that's not my, he was like, where? And I showed him, he's like, that's not me, dude. And I was like, oh man. He's like, here's my Facebook. And so I was like, all right, cool.
Yeah, we almost fought over this. Yeah, good.
Yeah. I was like super salty. I'm like, bro, why are you being like, I thought you invited me to come out and train. He's like, that's not my Facebook.
I mean, just to put this in perspective, this is 2008, 2009. So this kid, Nate Diaz, has been dealing with imposters and being basically a superstar for a decade and a half, man. It's incredible.
That's not easy.
And still real as shit.
Yeah, it's crazy how many like Diaz brother like Instagram and Facebook and like all these pages. Like it's crazy how many like not fake accounts there are.
So I actually I know a guy that owns his domain name, NateDiaz.com, and the guy just sold his business, everything. I'm like, I know I could get it from him. Like, I know the guy might give it to me like for free, but if Nate approaches him, he's going to want a shitload of money. So through Brian Garrity, I'm just like, hey, tell Nate, I'll get it for him, give it to him. He's got 7 pre-UFC fights. That'll take like 35 minutes. Give me a 35-minute interview on Zoom. And Nate just like skipped that and kept like talking about other stuff. He just doesn't give a shit. So I'm like, oh, okay. Yep, it is what it is.
It's easy. It's easy. You just do Nate Diaz 209 and he don't give a shit.
Yeah.
He's got it.
Yeah. So from there, dude, you guys got to see this fight. He fights Gleason Tebau at UFC 104. I have never seen a human being at 155 look so large as Gleason. And both of you guys missed weight at that fight.
Yeah, mine was only by a half pound. I could have made weight, but then he was over by a pound, and I was like, are you good? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, all right, cool, because I don't want to cut this extra half pound. So I mean, I missed weight, but I could have made weight because I would have had 2 hours to lose a half pound.
They stopped doing that. They stopped doing that. Sam Stout did that as well in his, and right after that, the UFC really kind of buckled down on guys just agreeing to miss weight.
I remember I went to one of my fights and I showed up there, and you know how they always weigh you when you first land, and I went there and I remember I got on the scale and it said, you know, so first person before me, it was like set at 177. I go, who's? Because I walked in, I was like 182. You know, I was like, damn, who's lighter than me? What the hell? Who's lighter than me at 170? And they go, oh no, that was Gleason Tebau. I said, he's got to make 155. So, and I saw him, and he looked ripped already at 177. I was like, dude, this guy's not gonna make it. You know, he had to lose 22 pounds in like 3 days. And so I remember the day of weigh-ins, I walk in to do my thing, and I walk in the locker room, and his ass is just sprawled out on the ground with like no clothes on besides a towel. And there's like these 5 guys yelling at him in Portuguese. And I was like, dude, he's going to die. So I stepped over him, went in the steam room and came back. And I was like, yeah, he made weight and won the fight too. That dude cut a lot of weight. You were right. That dude was big.
Yeah, I used to cut weight with, when I was at 55 was when Anthony Johnson was at 170. Oh. That's how I kind of became friends with Anthony, because we would always be cutting weight together, dying together. And yeah, it's crazy how big Anthony Johnson is too. That guy's huge.
When he missed weight, he missed it by like 8 pounds, 10.
But then he go up a weight class, miss
And he
again.
still missed it by 12.
Yeah.
So how many fights do you say you actually did it? Where the weight wasn't coming off, would you blow up hugely? You know what I mean? Because you went down to 55, and then you said immediately you started getting bigger. How many fights did you think you actually had to cut like that?
It was after the Mac Danzig fight, which would have been Kurt Pellegrino, I think. That was when I started. That was when I was like 185, and then the Gleason Tebau was the heaviest that I've been. I was like, and I took that one on somewhat short notice because he was actually supposed to fight Sean Shirk, I think. And Sean Shirk pulled out for some reason. I remember when I took that fight, I was like 192, 193.
Oh.
And it was like 5 or 6 weeks out.
Yeah, it's not easy. So Gleason uses his wrestling and just does takedown after takedown, and you wind up on the wrong end of the decision. And again, you get cut from the UFC, or you get released from the UFC for your third time, which is not an easy position to be in. Did you think, where were you at in your mind after that fight in regards to your fight career?
I don't really know. It was so long ago. Man, my whole fight career, I just always wanted to fight the best guy. So I think after that fight, that's when I fought Eddie Alvarez, right?
Yeah.
For the Bellator title. Yeah. So after that fight, I fought Eddie, and I lost that fight, and then I must have won a few fights after that, and then I got re-signed back to the UFC.
Yeah. So you go on a 7-fight win streak that include wins over Jesse Finney. And the thing about Finney is that he was as tough as nails, and he never fought again. Like, you beat him with a guillotine choke, Finney never steps in the cage again. And Jesse Juarez, who's got he's got an okay record, but one of his wins is against Robert Whitaker, former UFC champion.
Really? Robert Whitaker?
He's got a win over Robert Whitaker.
Yeah, he was a national champion wrestler.
Yeah, he also beat Blasovina, and like, you put together, a good set of fights, and you make a fourth run, and he fights one of our friends, Keith Wisniewski. And I'll tell you, Josh, I'm just going to be very direct with you in regards to this. You had a lot of trouble with Nick Thompson on the independent scene.
Yeah.
And your fighting style is phenomenal, but it also kind of caters to like a Keith Wisniewski type matchup. And man, I was shocked. I was shocked watching that fight about how easy you had it with Keith.
Yeah, I felt like, isn't Keith from Indiana, or where's he?
Yeah,
from?
he's right over the border. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure Chris knows, but man, I feel like I didn't fight Keith in his prime. His prime was probably like 4 or 5 years before that or so, but definitely a tough fight. And me and Keith used to fight on like all the same cards and stuff, so I've been following him, and then like Carlo Prater. Remember Carlo Prater?
We had him on. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah. Like back in the day, those were the two like guys in the Midwest that were like super good. Did Carlo Prater ever fight in the UFC? I think he did, didn't he?
Like twice, 2 or 3 times. Yeah.
But I don't think he fought when he was in his prime in the UFC.
No.
Like at the time, those were the two of the really top guys in the Midwest. Carlo Prater and Wisniewski, and Wisniewski beat Prater twice, I think.
Yeah, twice.
Yeah.
And he kind of got robbed on that third one. He should have beat him 3 times.
Oh, they fought 3 times? Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was definitely a good win for me, man.
Well, you also had an independent like win on the XKK, against Derek Noble too. So you quickly made a name for yourself on the independent scene in regards to being a top competitor. And the one thing that happened over and over in your fights was you constantly lost your mouthpiece. And in the Wisniewski fight, Keith is just eating heavy punch after heavy punch after heavy punch. In fact, it took 40 stitches. That's Keith's words in regards to when we talked to him about fighting yourself. He said it took 40 stitches to close him up. And he said, I don't think I could have finished Josh. I definitely wouldn't have won the fight, but I was definitely gaining momentum at the time when Josh's mouthpiece got knocked out of his mouth and it got stuck in between like the ring apron and the catwalk.
Yeah.
And for about 2 minutes, there's like a 2.5 minute time period where he's like, I'm thinking, God, he's catching his breath. He's catching his breath. And he's just like, hey, it is what it is.
Yeah. That was like a weird moment. I mean, I love Keith and stuff, but I wasn't like spitting out my mouthpiece on purpose. It was just, I bought like a Walmart mouthpiece.
But that happened a lot with you.
Yeah, because I bought a Walmart mouthpiece and I always cut my mouthpiece off super short because I don't like mouthpieces. It makes me gag.
Okay.
So I just, it always happened like that because I was too cheap I should have got it done by a dentist or, by someone that knew how to do it. But I just got the ones from Walmart that was like $1.
99 cents.
You just needed something in your mouth.
And it was always cut off. It only covered like my 4 front teeth. So it didn't even really even do anything.
Yeah.
On the bright side, if you cut it yourself, you did have a dentist do it.
Yeah, true.
Sorry about that.
So, we're kind of winding down here, but you also, he fights one of my favorite fighters, actually. And the build-up to this fight, I was just like, I ain't missing this. I don't care what plans you got. I'm going to be right in front of my TV when you stepped in the cage January 20, 2012 at UFC Fight Night against Duane Ludwig.
Oh, yeah.
Not an easy fight.
I don't like that guy either.
Really?
Yeah, man. That guy went to Team Alpha Male and never really coached anyone. And then all of a sudden he's coach of the year. I don't know. And then he like tried to steal all Team Alpha Male's people and stuff. I don't know. I didn't really like that guy. He was kind of a dick to me when I the first time that I met him too. I'm not a fan of him.
Wow.
So Duane's coming off one of the fastest UFC knockouts in the history at that time. And Josh is 33 years old, his 4th time back to the UFC, 7-1 since 2010. And Josh, you ended the fight with a guillotine choke in the first round.
Yeah.
Now, at some point too, you had mentioned that you asked for a release from the UFC because you wanted to up your level. Here, clearly, you've upped your level, right? I mean, you're taking out a solid guy first round, not a lot. You're not even taking damage at this point, really. How do you feel about your level? Are you ready to make a run at this point?
Yeah, for sure. I felt like I was on a run with that. And then I think my next fight I fought Mike Pyle. I was winning that
Mike
fight
Pyle.
too. Yeah, and then I got caught with just I feel like it was a lucky punch. I mean, it's whatever. He threw it, but yeah, that sucked. And I felt like if I would have won that fight, I could have got a really big fight after that.
So Mike Pyle, one, I respect him. He's with Extreme Couture. They say he's one of those guys that green lights people at the gym. So like I like him as I shouldn't say I like him. I respect him as a fighter, but the rumors of him just beating up people right off the street just to kind of run him out of the gym is something like him and Jay Huron have that reputation. So when somebody like that who has a reputation of a bully runs into a guy like Josh Neer, man, you got to expect fireworks because Josh is definitely not going to be afraid of him. Josh is walking him down and just socking him up, ready to finish him. And you got caught with a hook. Yeah. He was going though.
Yeah, I remember the last time I thought, I was like, man, this guy hits like a bitch. And then I woke up. I was like, oh damn, what the hell happened? The guy that hits like a bitch knocked me out. What the hell? So yeah.
The thing with that is
you get overconfident.
Pyle was a WEC champion too. So it would have been a kind of like a little nice notch on your belt.
Yeah, that's definitely one that I wish that I could get back. I wish I was in really good shape for that fight. I was like training super hard and just got caught. I guess it happens.
So right after the Ultimate Fighter season 13, Justin Edwards is kind of a fan favorite. He's from Mansfield, Ohio, which is kind of known for their high school football. And you get caught in a guillotine right away.
Yeah.
That's
another
rough.
fight that I want back. That's probably definitely the worst guy that I feel like that I've ever lost to. On my record, I don't see how that guy really beats me, but caught me in a good guillotine, and I knew that coming in too. And like we watched him, we're like, oh, he has a good guillotine, and then I put my head in there and got caught in the guillotine. Wasn't very smart.
The one thing that stands out about that fight is Nick Gamst is the referee.
Who is?
Nick Gamst.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that.
Yeah. Nick Gamst is the referee who you fought for several times.
Yeah, he didn't really like me though.
He didn't?
He was probably happy. Yeah, he didn't really like me. That's crazy. I didn't even know that he was the referee.
What was the issue between the two of you?
Oh, we didn't really have an issue. I just feel like he didn't like me. I was more friends with the other guy. So there was partners, Nick Gamst,
Jeff Paul.
Jeff Paul. That was my guy. I had a good relationship with Jeff Paul. I just think Nick Diaz didn't really like me. Thought I was a cocky kid that wanted too much money or something. I don't know. They didn't pay me very well. I don't know why he didn't like me.
So, Joe, let me just kind of come.
I was only making like $1,500 to fight. Shit.
So let me come full circle on this so everyone can get caught up. Nick Gamst is the same promoter that did a tournament where Nick Thompson was in our past interview. And Nick Thompson said, yeah, well, they didn't do the paperwork, so they moved the cage to the alley. I fought next to a dumpster, and they tried to pay me in a boat instead of money. That's the same promoter.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. See, I was cool with Jeff. Jeff was my dude. He always took care of me, was super nice to me. And, that's just who I bonded with. I didn't really like Nick.
Yeah, let me ask you too. Now, trying to get back on track here. You said you wanted the Mike Pyle. You got caught with a punch. You got caught with a submission. At this point, and you've got a lot of fights. Obviously, a 50 Fight Club member.
50 Fight Club member.
Are you starting to think? Are you starting to feel a little slower, or like some miles are starting to show, or not yet? How are you holding up?
Well, with the punch, I like a little bit. I'm like, man, like I don't know how I got knocked out by that punch. Like that shouldn't have knocked me out. Like, so I don't know. Maybe obviously, every time that you get punched, that's gonna take a wear and tear on your body, and But with the submission, I just got caught. Like, you can get caught, and like. If the guillotine sunk in, you aren't getting out. So
do you think maybe you not look past them, but you thought, man, I beat these champs from the Ultimate Fight. This guy's not on my level. This is gonna be an easy fight. Do you think you just look past him?
Definitely with Justin Edwards, not with Mike Pyle. I definitely trained hard and was like ready with Justin, yeah. Like man, I definitely looked past him. I like was not motivated for that fight. I thought I was just gonna run through him, and you know that's what happens. You have to take everyone serious. If you don't, then you can get beat by anyone.
We've all had fights like that, man. It's just so like when you don't take these people that serious, they're trying to build their name off you, bro. And all of a sudden, like you have to be 100% focused every time, and you give it that much. I've had to handle like shit, you know. Like I guess I'm not as good as I thought I was.
Yeah, exactly. It humbles you. Like, oh man, that was definitely man. I was like embarrassed of the Justin Edwards fight.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, and that was pretty close to my hometown. It was in Minneapolis. You know, it's only 3.5 hours away. I had a lot of people that came up and watched that fight, and then it's like, yeah, it was horrible. I remember you're like, was it your last fight in UFC? Didn't you have like a retirement fight in your hometown?
Man, no, it was I fought there like 2 fights before my retirement. Was in my hometown, but then my last fight was in Milwaukee, which is pretty close. You know, it's only about 4 hours away, so it was nice.
Yeah, I remember when you fought in your hometown and stuff. That was cool.
Yeah, that's
how I'd want to go out. You know.
Yeah, that would have been nice, but I had a couple more after that. I was happy how I got to go out there. I was close to home, and I got to be the main event, and I got to win. It was nice, man. I got lucky. So,
yeah.
So Josh, you've seen, obviously, I mean, you've been in a ton of wars. You're a 50 Fight Club member, and you're the type of guy that likes to take punches in order to like see that window and go through it in order to give punches. And you've seen your friend, one of your really good friends, Spencer Fisher, and how he's been dealing with a lot of the fights that he has taken. How is your memory, or have you looked into testing or anything like that, just kind of make sure everything is working the way it's supposed to mentally?
No, I haven't looked into any of that.
Have you thought about like psilocybin, getting in some of those studies?
No, I'm not the type of person that really goes to the doctor for anything. So,
but I mean, do you feel good? You feel all right? I mean, you're training right now, man. So you're killing it. Looks like.
I feel fine. You know, I feel like everyone's. You know, it's a contact sport. Like, I hope that everyone feels good. Spencer's situation sucks and everything, but it's like that's the risk that we take going into the ring or the cage or whatever, so
agreed.
Excellent. Well, you had one more UFC fight, Court McGee, who was the Ultimate Fighter 11, season 11 winner at 185, and it was hard to watch, as a fan of yours. It seemed like you had an off night that night. Yeah.
I was ready for that fight. I was trained up and ready to go. He just outworked me in that fight. He's just better. And at that time he was on a run because he just beat didn't he just beat Robert Whitaker right before that too, or maybe 2 fights before that or something?
He did, and against yourself, in like, let's put this in a proper perspective. He broke the UFC significant strike record previously held by Nick Diaz against Josh.
Really? Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah, he was throwing a lot of punches. Like, I remember going into a farm like, dude, like, you don't normally fight like this. I don't know. He must have trained hard and like
maybe that was his first EPO experience or something.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, Josh, we have, as Miguel said, I'm gonna steal his phrase. There's a lot of boxes people check, and I'm watching this and I'm like, there's like 300 punches thrown to like 5 or 6 on your side in one of the rounds. I'm like, this guy's on EPO. He's not even close to breathing hard, not even close to gassing out. And you're one of those pressure guys, and you're running into somebody that just got a full gas tank.
Yeah, he turned into Nick Diaz that night.
Yeah, exactly.
He must have watched the Nick Diaz fight. Shit.
Hey, I can watch that shit, but I can't do it unless I think some chemical enhancement might help. Just my theory. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm done.
Wait, I mean, man, I gotta tell you, I totally appreciate you being here for a lot of reasons, but my main one is, you're the kind of guy that I like as a fighter. You're the epitome of what it is. Like, I'm a huge Keith Wisniewski fan, just a grinder, a tough ass guy. I'm Midwestern hard worker, which is what I feel like I am. And those are real fighters to me. I would rather watch people like you and me and those guys all day long than a fast, flashy guy who, I don't know. I wasn't born with the greatest athletic skill, and I just work my ass off like you do. I'm a grinder, dude, and that's my favorite thing. And just old school guys, they ain't like us anymore, man. So thank you for being here, and thank you for your career, man. I absolutely love it.
I got one more. So Mike Estes, North Iowa Fights, has about a few weeks ago, I did the color commentary for it. And Randy Spence and Nate Diaz fly to Iowa to do like a meet and greet and seminar. How did that go for these California guys, seeing like this flat, cow-ridden, crop-ridden like northern Iowa? There's nothing there. How did that wind up?
Well, Des Moines, there's more stuff, but Nate actually he did a seminar here twice. He did one right after the Conor McGregor 2 fight too.
Wow.
Yeah. A month after Conor McGregor 2, he did a seminar at my gym right after that fight. And then this is the second time that he's did the seminar here.
Super cool.
He came down. Des Moines is a little bit different than Mason City, man. We actually we have some stuff to do here. We went out and had a good night the night before the seminar. I'll just say that.
I love it.
In typical Diaz fashion, they had to do a second rules meeting because they weren't there for the first one.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm like, you guys, like, well, we're waiting. I'm like, yeah, and you guys are gonna keep waiting. They're gonna come after the amateurs are done. Yeah, because they had a bunch of pros on the card. Yeah, I know, it was fun. It was good. And when Nate Diaz walked to the cage, the entire audience, like, the guy he emotes, as a champion. He's got like that championship type of energy to him.
Yeah, for sure. It's crazy, like how like much of a celebrity they are. It's crazy. I always get mad at Nate. I'm like, bro, you didn't text me back, or you didn't call me back. He's like, dude, I'm busy. Like, one time I got into his car, and how you plug it in, and you have like it pulls up your like missed calls and your text messages and stuff. And I looked at the screen, and he had like 587 unread text messages, and like 300 and some missed calls, and this was just in one day. That's probably why you don't return my text or return my call sometime. Well, I'm like, I don't really care about those guys. Just return my phone call when I call you.
Hell, just finding the phone call would have been tough, though. I ain't searching through 100 to see who called me.
You got to change your number at that point.
You got to get two phones, a real phone.
Yeah, he's had the same phone number since I have been training out there, and it's been like 10 years, and he still has the same phone number. I'm like, bro, like, you're this huge celebrity, and you have had the same phone number the whole time. I think he probably just blocks people or something. Yeah. I've never asked him, but it's kind of crazy that he's never had a different phone number.
You got to change your number. And you got to assume he probably has had it, even through his beginning professional career. So a lot of idiots probably have it going, oh, hey, great fight, dude. Great job.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Well, Josh, I want to thank you for not blocking me when I reached out for the interview. But we really want to thank you for your time. Like you mentioned, you don't do a lot of these. And, like everything you do, this was fucking very honest and very genuine. And I enjoyed it a great deal. My first time meeting you, too. So very, very much thank you.
True warrior.
Real quick, any plugs for your gym or anything you want to get out of here?
Yeah, just Elite Edge, Ankeny. Come through if you want to train. We have jiu-jitsu, boxing, kickboxing, everything. So come through. And if you can get that Thiago Alves fight, I'll take that.
I'll talk to him. I'll talk to the bare knuckle.
Hey, Chris.
I don't know if I can talk to UFC or
Chris,
I don't know if Thiago will take it, but the bare knuckle would love it.
This might open up a Josh Neer pre-UFC interview. I think you should get that for him.
There you go.
Yeah.
Cool.
Excellent. Thank you, bro.
Well, hey, man, we thank you for your time and appreciate it, brother. And good luck to you. And we'll hopefully see you again sometime soon.
All right, for sure. See you guys.
Hey, brother. Man, that was a great interview. Man, I really like Josh. I always liked his style. He's a true fighter to me. I mean, you get a lot of people now fighting for a lot of different reasons and different motivations. That is a real guy, man. He just wants to come in and fight. He's still a fighter. That is just who he is. And that is one thing that I think's lost from the old school guys and some of the newer guys. He's a fighter. Like I say, not the most athletic, not the most technical, but he's a hard-nosed dude. I wouldn't want to see him in a dark alley. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
great information too. I mean, I love the old school scene and he has all kinds of stuff, but I mean, we basically went over his UFC. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so, I sort of agree too. Chris, the bottom line is there are some guys who would be fighting under the bridge or by the dumpster if there was no money in this. And I think Neer, Vanderlei Silva, maybe, so guys like that. And I think Josh Neer qualifies as one of those dudes.
On top of that, an interview like this doesn't exist, so it's a good get. And we had a couple people contact us through social media saying, the indie scene's amazing, great stories, but we also want to get caught up on the UFC stuff. This was the one interview I was really torn with because Josh has got such an incredible indie grind, is what we refer to it as. So, Chris, we're going to have to figure out how to get him for the indie grind because, he's real short. Like, there's a fucking train. I don't know. Do you guys want to start over? Did you guys hear that?
Just cut it out. Can you give me just keep going?
Okay. Do you hear it?
Barely. Do you?
Oh shit, dude! It's like through my whole house.
Okay. Can you hear me go? I mean, I kind of heard it.
No, yeah.
All right, do you want me to keep going, or do you want me to start over?
It's not a showstopper as far as the recording. Keep going.
Okay. So when an interview like this comes about, it's like we're at a crossroads: independent grind, UFC career. And then you look at his UFC career and you're like, he's got both Diaz brothers. He's got Josh Berkman. He's got all these high-end, just incredibly exciting fights. And we're going to have to figure out how to get him back for the independent grind. And Chris, we might be putting this on your shoulders with the bare knuckle appearance.
Mike, you know what that means? Yeah, I was going to say, this to me sounds like something we need to do in person. I'd like to do it. I'd like to sit down with him in person. That's how we got to do Neer, I think.
I agree. Excellent. Well, hey, guys, like, share, subscribe. We're growing. We need your help. Without your help, we can't grow. And, thanks for joining us. I hope you guys enjoyed this interview as much as we did.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.